take a memo on your Newton. Beat up Martin. Bah!
We're sorry. All circuits are busy now.
For the last several months, I have been trying to build a Snow Leopard Hackintosh. Understandably, some people have been asking, why? Why would you want to do that? There are actually a few reasons, and I want to go through each of those so you can understand how my thought process evolved on this problem. So, in 2023, I started a video on PowerPC machines, and I ended off that video complaining about the G5 Quad. If you were at Vintage Computer Festival Pacific Northwest this year, you would have actually seen my G5 Quad from that same video.
How's it going?
It's gonna be over.
Welcome to the Copy Going Black Mega, presented by this slowly dying G5 Quad.
Oh no, what is it doing now?
Happens memory channels are missing.
Oh!
They're just fucking not there. You
So it's
ram it and it's just like, no.
So it's just doing G5 things then?
Yeah, also it's running at like 400 megahertz, not 667. I don't know
What
why.
have you...
It's just broken.
I ended up leaving the side panel off of my G5 Quad for this event because people were absolutely enchanted with the disastrous engineering behind this thing. I won't rehash it here, but I got to explain this to over 1,000 people in a single weekend, and I felt a bit like the guy in Chernobyl where he's explaining how the reactor exploded.
Cool water takes heat out of the system. As it does, it turns to steam, or what we call a void. In an RBMK reactor of the type used at Chernobyl, there's something called a positive void coefficient. What does that mean?
After the event, I took the G5 Quad back to my shop with half of its memory missing and sat it back in the corner with its brethren, and once again told myself, I'll repair them one day.
But when I'm passionate about something, I see it through to the end.
Father, give me legs. Father.
So at this point, I'd had a G5 Quad that had been slowly dying for the last few years, and I'd spent more than a few weeks unsuccessfully trying to make a Hackintosh. So I finally caved in, and I figured, what if I just get an Intel Mac? As long as I can run Snow Leopard, I can still run all of my PowerPC software, and making a Mac run Windows is easier than making a PC run Snow Leopard. Right?
But since I came here, felt the joy and the fear, finding myself making every possible mistake.
So, the first thing I needed to do was find a Mac Pro. First, naturally, I checked RePC, who cheerfully informed me they have none. So then I checked with their bigger store down in Kent. As expected, they also had nothing. But then a breakthrough. My friend Ryan informed me he in fact had one, and I could come pick it up for free. The only downside is he lives all the way out in Port Orchard, with the only ferry service near him being in White Center. But hey, a free Mac is a free Mac, so off I went.
Many hours later.
Finally, I had the Mac back in my workshop. And it didn't work! In a supremely rare moment of actually being vaguely helpful, Apple Mac Pros have a bunch of diagnostic LEDs on them. And after studying these for a little while, it turned out that the CPU board had failed. Not the CPU, the CPU board. Because Apple giveth and Apple taketh away, CPUs in Mac Pro 4.1s and 5.1s are on a separate daughter board. And if for some terrible reason that board fails, you need to buy a whole new one. So that set me back another week or two, but once I got the new CPU board in, everything was smooth sailing, right?
You're in my world now, not your world. And I got friends on the other side.
So, after getting a new CPU card installed and verifying the system could boot, I decided to live stream on my Discord the process of getting Snow Leopard installed, because I figured this would only take a couple hours at most. To that end, here's what I said about 30 seconds into the live stream, when I still had hope that this was actually going to be an okay project. I plugged in a thumb drive with Snow Leopard on it, immediately switched to an Apple logo like 2 seconds later.
Yeah, no, like, they're genuinely great.
It's like, no bro, I got you. Just boom, booting. Positively drunk on my own self-confidence, I proceeded to install Snow Leopard. 20 minutes? But I want it now! Oh, and of course I can't fucking skip this. I think the battery on this is dead, because that was very incorrect for a second there. Safari. Retronas. I don't have local DNS. Fuck. I don't know which one of these to download. I thought I had the... I guess I could just do it from the Mac itself on this one. But now that I have a working Mac, maybe I can also do a Hackintosh using like OpenCore. After rebooting a few times, Snow Leopard had fully updated itself, completely uneventfully. So once again, with way too much confidence, I decided it was time to install Windows alongside Snow Leopard on this Mac. Where do I get Boot Camp for this thing? Or does it already come with Boot Camp?
I think Boot Camp is like on the macOS disk.
Okay, it does. Download the Windows support software for this Mac. Why does that need admin rights? Just download it. That's dumb.
Because
what?
it's a Mac.
Well, that's not good. In what probably should have been an omen for the rest of this video, Apple has seemingly delisted the old Boot Camp drivers. So while you can update OS X Snow Leopard, you cannot download Boot Camp drivers and will need to use the ones off the CD or find them on Apple's website. After spending about 10 minutes searching Apple's Boot Camp archives, it seems that they've delisted a lot of the older versions of Boot Camp, specifically the ones for Windows XP, which meant I had to make a fateful decision. Also, for extra funsies, I'm going to put Windows Vista on it. Well, no, because I need to run the Boot Camp utility for it to go and, like, mess with the drive. So I assume it wants a fat drive. So now I can erase Bay 3, which is the disk I just inserted. And conveniently, unlike every other machine I have, this one has a probably working DVD burner. Invariably, something is going to go horribly wrong.
Many minutes later.
Kind of weird that patching the MBR would fix that anyway. It makes me wonder how they implemented that.
Probably poorly. I'm now going to interject and explain in hindsight what I was trying to do to this Windows installation and why. So, while Apple for a while used Intel processors, they were not PCs. They did a lot of custom things that made it much more difficult to run Windows than would be expected. They were also somewhere between lazy and malicious when it came to Boot Camp. The main example here that I'm trying to fix is, by default, the Mac pretends that you have IDE hard disks. These are what PCs in the 1990s up until about the early to mid 2000s used. IDE was replaced with SATA around the year 2004. Windows Vista, since it came out in 2006, and Windows 7 in 2009, both natively support SATA drives out of the box. It's not a problem for them. Windows XP, because it came out in 2001, predated the existence of SATA drives, so the only way to install to a SATA drive is typically with a boot floppy, or by making a custom image with the driver installed in the XP installer already. Because Boot Camp still supports Windows XP, Apple left this option on by default, and provided no normal way to disable it. The problem with this is emulating an IDE drive by necessity means it is going to run at IDE speeds. This is made even worse if we say install an SSD into our Mac. This leaves the SSD limping along at a whopping 30 megabytes per second. or about 10% the speed of the actual SATA drive controller. So if we set it to SATA mode, we get a 10 times speed boost. To make a long story short, this took about 12 hours for me to get working correctly and reliably. The process to convert it back to a SATA mode hard disk is also very hacky. The first thing you need to do is, of course, install Windows Vista, which, by the way, if you try to do off a USB drive rather than the DVD, runs at USB 1.1 speeds, or about 1.5 megabytes per second, because that's what the Apple firmware tells it to do until Windows loads and loads a USB 2 driver. Thanks, Apple! Once this is completed and Vista's installed, and you go into Device Manager, you'll notice that it is showing a bunch of IDE devices. The first step is you need to enable the ACHI driver inside of the Windows registry. Once this is done, you need to go back into Device Manager and manually change the driver that is loading for the IDE drives to force them into a sort of pseudo SATA mode. This next part is where things truly went off the rails. Intel delisted all of their old drivers many years ago, and finding the exact ones for this Mac for Windows Vista was extremely difficult. If you installed the wrong driver version, and I did, you would render the system unbootable. It would simply blue screen of death as soon as it started booting. This necessitated me reinstalling Vista no less than 4 separate times. But finally, at nearly 2 in the morning, after 4 separate Windows Vista reinstalls, I did it. I had a working SATA driver. The only version of this software I was able to find that worked is the Intel Matrix Storage Console, version 8.9. Apparently, 8.8 and 8.7 would cause blue screens and were known to be broken. But now, I can operate my lovely Samsung SSD at a full 300 megabytes per second. As an added bonus, I was able to find an old version of the Samsung Magician software, which let me enable various additional features for the SSD, such as trim, which let me truly max out the drive's performance, as demonstrated here in their internal performance benchmark utility. I do realize that 284 megabytes per second is not exactly 300, which is what the controller is rated at, but I think we can call that within the margin of error, and still leaps and bounds ahead of the 30 megabytes a second that we started with. But with this test completed, I proceeded to go home, because it was 2 in the morning, and I had spent 12 hours working on this project.
What did we learn, Palmer?
I don't know, sir.
I don't fucking know either. I guess we learned not to do it again.
So, I've talked at length about how I got this Mac working, but I haven't touched on why. Why did I need a Mac to begin with? And I think my answer here is going to disappoint at least some of the people that I know personally, and a lot of people that truly enjoy Macs more than any other platform. The reality is I have no specific reverence or interest in Mac or OS X as a platform. But if you've kept up with my projects, you'll know that I've been working on CompuGlobal HyperMegaNet for a little over 1.5 years at this point. And where Macs fit into this is as a sort of technological wedge. The internet was never purely Windows systems. They did dominate the vast majority, but they were never the de facto exclusive machine on the internet. So there were allowances made for Macs and Linux systems and portable devices running Symbian or Windows CE or other weird devices. Unfortunately, with server emulation software for various applications like AOL Instant Messenger or BattleNet games from Blizzard such as StarCraft, they only really tested on Windows platforms, so if other platforms have bugs, they were never found. These developers are happy to fix these bugs, but they need to be found and reported. To that end, I'm only one person. I only have so many devices that I can test with. I would wholeheartedly recommend that anyone who has weird old devices and platforms like Windows CE or Symbian or old Linux or BOS or anything weird that is not Windows, bring it and connect it to the Retro Network, and then try and run your applications. The more weird stuff that we can get working, the better we can make the network for everybody.